Hey there, Christophe from the French Herbal. Here's a question that I get on a regular basis. Should you use one herb at a time or should you use blends of herbs? And just to be clear, we're talking about herbalism and health management and not kitchen management and cooking. Because for cooking, I love my herbal and spice blends, although I also love my single herbs too for cooking. So yes, it is a very good question. On the one hand, when you buy books or magazines about medicinal plants, the plants are usually presented individually, right? So your instinct will be to test them one by one for your health issues, which makes sense, right? So if you suffer from migraines, then maybe you try feverfew, or maybe you have joint pain, well, meadowsweet. Thyroid underfunctioning, maybe ashwagandha, etc., etc. You see what I mean. On the other hand, if you ever visited a herbal store, you've probably seen already made blends, right? And these blends usually contain 5 to 10 plants and they are formulated for a specific concern. For instance, it might be sleep issues or digestive upset or menopause, etc. So single herbs on one side, herbal blends on the other. What are the pros and cons of each approach? Before we start, let me remind you that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a pharmacist or a healthcare professional, so this episode is not meant to be a substitute for medical advice. Okay, so let's get started. First, it's interesting to note that in some traditions, like Chinese or Ayurvedic herbal medicine, herbs are almost always used in blends. And those blends, they've been very carefully crafted over centuries and centuries of practice. And there are hundreds of blends in certain traditions. And practitioners don't modify those blends. They take them for granted usually. And their practice consists of diagnosing the imbalance, in the Eastern views, right? And picking the right blend for that situation, right? So we'll put the Eastern view on the side because today I'm speaking from a traditional Western herbal perspective. And in that context, the practitioner, either a professional herbalist or an at-home herbalist, will have a choice. Make blends for different situations or use single herbs. Sure, we have books with recommended blends, but there's no well-accepted list of blends like Chinese or Ayurvedic medicine. So on a regular basis, we may want to reinvent and to craft our own blends. The big advantage of using single herbs is that you really get to know that plant, right? So single herbs are best for learning. And when I say learning, I don't mean just for beginners, right? Because even experienced herbalists will want to experience a new plant this way. For instance, a few years ago, I planted Artemisia afra in my garden. And I had read studies mentioning that it may be as effective as Artemisia annua, the one we call sweet Annie, which is anything but sweet, by the way. So anyway, since I didn't know that plant, I tested it on its own, not in blends, because I wanted to see how it feels, how it tastes. So, I could discover that new plant that I didn't have in my database. And then once I knew it, I was able to give it a place in blends, right? And decide what percentage for what exactly. And along the way, I found out that, maybe it's supposed to have the same properties, but the energetics, the taste, the smell, completely different, right? So using single herbs allows you to discover how it tastes when it's dried and maybe even when it's fresh, if you harvest it yourself or you grow it in your garden. Trust your senses of taste, of smell. Then learn how to prepare it, to transform it into tinctures or infused oils or powders or other preparations. Does alcohol do a good job of extracting what this plant stands for? Is the plant stable once you have powdered it? Then you can take it carefully in small amounts, and I'm assuming here we're talking about harmless plants, right? And you will notice what changes it creates in your body and in your mind, if anything. And at a minimum, you'll get acquainted with its taste and smell, which is very important. You know, you're building a library of senses, and with time, you'll learn to associate a taste or smell with a particular action. Now, let's talk about the advantages of using blends. The first point is that health issues are multifactorial. That means there are usually several overlapping causes. And to bring things back into balance, we often need to support several physiological systems at once. The liver, digestion, circulation, the nervous system, the lymphatic system, etc., etc. And in that context, one single herb usually won't be enough. Sure, there are exceptions. Sure, you have what I could call the plant that can do it all, right? If you look at the properties of yarrow or sage or angelica, herbs that have a very long tradition of use in different countries, you're like, darn, this plant can do so much. But it also has complexities attached to it. It comes with many collateral properties and energies that you may not control. So if you're dealing with a chronic condition, sometimes a well-designed blend made for your specific situation with specific plants may bring the best results. But then, how do you create a blend? Well, this opens two possible doors. Door number one, you're a beginner and you can buy books that will suggest some pre-formulated blends for different conditions. Maybe you have migraines or IBS or PMS or acne, whatever. A good herbal book will give you well-formulated blends for your condition. Of course, there's one piece of the puzzle missing here, and that piece is you. Your constitution, you're unique. And the books will address a condition and not exactly who you are. But that's still a suitable approach if you're just starting your herbal practice. Door number two, you have a little more experience. You already know a bunch of single herbs and you would like to create a blend for you, for your condition. That's when we step into what I call the art of formulation, because it's an art, the skill of combining plants together, and that will be for another discussion. Hey, just a quick pause to let you know you can grab my free ebook on preparing herbal teas for the 4 seasons. It's full of simple recipes and blends you can make with herbs you can buy or even grow almost anywhere. The link is right below this episode. Go check it out. Okay, so let's wrap up. And then I'll give you some examples of herbal blends in the French tradition. Here are my recommendations. Pick a handful of plants that will be of use for your own health, maybe 10 or so, no more, and that's already quite a lot. For instance, if your goal is to ease your joint inflammations, well, look up the classic herbs for joint pain in your reference books, and then you can try them one by one. Not because this approach will bring fast relief, but because if you really want to understand plants, you have to go through this stage. It's well invested in the long run, but in the short run, it may bring less results. Each plant has different energetics, and you will learn to see if they bring relief for you or not. Forget about the books, It's you. For example, ginger for joint inflammation is quite different from willow for joint inflammation. Sure, they both appear in your books under joint pain, but they work quite differently. Not just on inflammation, but also on circulation and the digestive tract, for instance. Think of it like learning to cook. You need to know each separate ingredient to see which one you like. Otherwise, you cannot make a great recipe that will turn you on, not your neighbor, not your cousin. Well, it's the same here. Learn to recognize each herb on its own and how it works on you. And at the same time, use blends, because this is a great shortcut for learning faster. You can visit a herbal store and check what the herbalists include in their joint inflammation blend, and maybe buy a couple of blends, and then look through your books to see what experienced herbalists recommend in their own pain formula and herbal blend for joint pain. And yes, you can do both at the same time. You can learn through single herbs and at the same time learn through blends. Learning does not need to be linear. You can do things in parallel, right? Okay, now let me give you some examples of tea blends to illustrate the concept of synergy. The first one comes from Dr. Leclerc, one of the founding figures of French herbalism. It's a blend for menopause discomfort, and it includes 50 grams of dried red vine leaves, 25 grams of dried fumitory, and 25 grams of dried marjoram flowering tops. Okay, and the doctor recommends use as a tea 1 tablespoon of the blend per cup, 2 to 3 cups a day. So you write down those 3 plants, then in your herbal books, you turn to the page on red vine, and you'll see that, it supports venous and lymphatic circulation. So Leclerc likely saw a vascular component in menopause trouble, right? So you think, interesting. Next, you look up fumitory. It supports liver function. That is what we call a depurative plant. That means during menopause, you need to work on the liver. Yeah. It makes sense since the liver plays a central role in hormone metabolism and clearance. Okay, I get it. As for marjoram, well, it's both digestive and in the French herbal tradition, it is calming to the nerves, likely an important area to support during menopause. So you see, in a few minutes, you've learned quite a lot from a lifelong herbal practitioner, Leclerc. Simply by studying one of his blends to support menopause, he thought it was important to support blood and lymphatic circulation, liver clearance, digestion, and the nervous system. Here's another example, this time from Dr. Valnet, another pioneer of French herbalism. And this one is for menopause as well, specifically for hot flashes. It contains horse chestnut, witch hazel, passion flower, and hawthorn. So, well, you do a little research on those 4 plants, and you see that Valnet focused mainly on 2 key areas: the vascular system, supporting heart function, arteries and capillaries with hawthorn, and then supporting venous and lymphatic return with horse chestnut and witch hazel. And second, the nervous system, right? Calming the nerves with hawthorn, calming the heart as well, and calming the nerves with passion flower. And you notice that these are more or less the same axes that Leclerc focused on. So a pattern starts to emerge. And with this pattern, you start to learn about holistic strategies that you can apply to different health situations. So we can learn from the theory in a top-down manner, and we can work from examples from the field in a bottom-up manner. If you do both, you will make connections and true learning can happen. Okay, that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoy those discussions. If you do, please let me know in a comment. So learning herbalism through single herbs, good, and learning herbalism through blends, both will teach you important lessons. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you soon in another episode of The French Herbal.